This is your tutorial for the AP World History DBQ. So when you do the AP World History DBQ, the first place you're going to start, as with all essays, is your thesis statement. The thesis statement should be treated as an introductory paragraph. I know, again, this sounds really strange from your English classes and from everything you've been taught. You're going to want to do a full-blown introductory paragraph. Please don't do this. It's a waste of your time or your space in the essay. Go straight to the thesis statement. You want to make it look like an introductory paragraph, indent it, separate it from the body paragraphs, but all you need is the thesis statement. The thesis statement has to address all parts of the question. I know you're probably saying, well, duh, of course it has to do that. But believe it or not, a lot of people read through questions or prompts really quickly, and they forget that what they have to address is what's being asked in the question. And I'm going to call that the impacts of the question. The impacts of the question are the specific areas that you're being asked to address in this essay. Find what those are and make sure you're addressing those. Your thesis statement is 2 to 3 sentences. You want to provide a clear and specific reason for your argument. And then provide a significant statement that addresses the impacts of those issues in the question that we were talking about. Let's take a look at a few examples. Okay, the prompt says, analyze the causes and consequences of the Green Revolution in the period from 1945 to the present. Now, a few things that are really important to point out here. Notice carefully that the impacts of the question are causes and consequences. So you have to make sure inside of your thesis statement that you're going to address both of those, causes and consequences. If you leave one out, then you lose out on the points for the thesis statement. Now when you get to the body paragraphs, that's going to be important too. You're going to want to make sure in your body paragraphs that you address either causes or consequences inside of each body paragraph. If your arguments don't come back to that issue, they're going to be insignificant. So here's a poor example. The Green Revolution led to lots of changes for the developing world that were positive. Okay, why is this a bad example? It is dealing with causes, but nowhere in here do we have anything about consequences. In fact, the only thing that maybe refers to that is the word positive, but it's so vague, it's not that significant. Here's a better example. Populations in the 20th century that were suffering from famines and shortages in food. Here are causes, and notice that we have a very specific impact that's stated here. Famines and shortages in food. Not a fact, but a specific impact. The Green Revolution helped to create a surplus of food. Here's consequences, again, not a fact, but a specific consequence. Surpluses of food. But it has been questioned due to the negative environmental effects. What we get out of that is a significant statement for the long term. So notice here what I'm looking for. You got to talk about both impacts, causes, and consequences. And after that, you want to make sure it's specific without being factual, and there's a long-term significant statement. Your body paragraphs. So I would suggest the following model for doing body paragraphs. It doesn't have to follow this exactly, but it does have to have these elements. First off, you're going to group together similar documents into a grouping of 2 to 4 documents. That goes in your topic sentence. Your topic sentence is going to group together documents under a common theme. Then you're going to paraphrase each document individually. Make sure that after you paraphrase a document, you provide a statement of significance for that document. And then finish the body paragraph by giving a point of view for just one of the documents that you use in the body paragraph. I'm going to go over each one of these in the next few slides, so you'll see some specific examples of what I'm looking for. Groupings. Okay, this goes in your topic sentence in one direct and concise sentence. Make sure do not spread this out over several sentences. It goes in one sentence. The grouping is going to include 2 to 4 documents that are directly referenced. Don't give me one document, that's not a group. Don't give me more than 4 because then it just gets insignificant and too general. Groupings include 2 to 4 documents. Groupings need to be significant by being connected back to the thesis, so causes or consequences, and you've got to provide a reason for the grouping. Okay, what's really important, by the end of this essay, you need to have 3 groupings. That is the minimum that you must have, 3 groupings. Okay, I also want you to notice, this is really important, that when you make a grouping, it can't just be a grouping. It has to be a significant grouping. How do you know it's significant? Relates back to the question. The question is about causes and or consequences. So here's some examples. Here's a poor example. Documents 1, 3, and 4 can be grouped together because the authors were all Americans. Okay, notice this is a grouping. We have 3 documents. There you go. It's within the 2 to 4. Okay, it's specific. Okay, but it's not significant. Sure, all of the authors were American, but why does that have anything to do with causes or consequences? Here would be a good example. Documents 1, 3, and 4 can be grouped together around progress because the authors were all scientists who were trying to increase living standards. Notice what's good about this example. First off, you have a grouping. 1, 3, and 4, so we're in that 2 to 4 range. Can be grouped together around progress. Okay, progress is a very specific term without being factual. And notice too that it says here the authors were all scientists who were trying to increase living standards. By saying this, we provide a significance. Notice that this also is about consequences, so it directly ties back to the prompt and to the thesis. Evidence. So the way you're going to deal with the documents is as they are evidence. You're going to paraphrase each document individually and then state its significance. For example, here's a poor example. Document 3 was about how President Truman wanted to help the developing world. This created positive effects. Okay, why is this a bad example? Well, what you're doing here is that you're telling me document 3 is about how President Truman wanted to do this vague thing called helping the developing world. I don't know what that means. Now, don't take this the wrong way. You don't need to go into depth where you have 3, 4, 5 sentences for every document. You don't have time or space for that. But you do need to make sure that the one sentence you provide on the paraphrasing is more in depth. Saying that it created positive effects is way too vague, way too general. Here's a much better example. Document 3 states that the developed world can help the developing world to grow its economy. Notice what you've done here. You've paraphrased what Truman actually said. He wanted the developed world, the United States, to help the developing world to grow its economy. Now notice how we provide even more depth to the significance statement. Truman was operating after the Second World War when developed countries wanted growth in the developing world for international trade to stop communism. So here we have a specific significance statement about how the developed world, the United States, was trying to stop communism by increasing international trade. So this is what you want to do in order to provide good evidence that's specific and provides overall significance. Now, you're going to end your body paragraph with something called point of view. And this is rather abstract, kind of difficult, so I'm going to explain it, now I'm going to provide an example. Point of view has the following elements: attribution, purpose, and significance. Attribution means you tell me who wrote the document. Now, when I say that, please never give me a name. That's not what I'm looking for. What I'm looking for in attribution is the social status of the author, like gender, class, national origins, or religion. Next up is purpose, and this is where a lot of students get kind of mixed up. Purpose is different from paraphrasing. Paraphrasing gives us the substance of what the person said. Purpose tells us the function, or what the document does. Then you end off with significance. Why is this document important? How does the document explain a particular interpretation? So here are some examples. Let me give you a poor example. Document 4 was written by Norman Borlaug in order to state the positive effects from the Green Revolution. Okay, notice here, document 4 was written by Norman Borlaug. Okay, who's Norman Borlaug? What is his attribution? Giving a name doesn't tell me anything about him. In order to state the positive effects, this is really general, very vague, from the Green Revolution. Here's a much better example. Document 4 was written by a scientist, okay, that's Norman Borlaug, who is promoting the use of technology to solve world hunger. Okay, notice there's our purpose. The scientist was the original scientist to do the Green Revolution, and he's arguing that he wants to use technology to solve world hunger. Notice, this is not a paraphrasing of his argument, it's the purpose or function of his argument. Now, here comes the significance. His opinion demonstrates success in solving global hunger, but leaves out the environmentally negative impacts of the Green Revolution. So notice here that what we're talking about is, here's the significance. Significance is, this is talking about global hunger, but leaves out some really significant issues as well, the negative impacts of the Green Revolution. Hypothetical document. Okay, this is also going to be a kind of a weird thing. Let me try to explain it and I'll give you an example. The very last paragraph of your essay, so this is your concluding paragraph. And I know it's going to be strange because you're going to be wanting to do what you do in your English classes. You want to provide like a restatement of the thesis, you're going to want to rehash the issues of the essay, you're going to want to try and bring up a parallel to some other issue. I understand that. That's for your English class. That's your audience in your English class. It's not your audience here. Your audience here is AP World History teachers. So what you're going to be doing in this last paragraph is doing something called a hypothetical document. You're not creating a whole document. You're not going to sit down and say, okay, I've got to come up with this guy and this is what he says and we're going to go. You're not going to do that. What you're doing is you're telling me what type of document would give us more information. So you're offering a possible document that would give us more information. You're trying to tell us, you know, a historian would look at this other source in order to try to figure out an answer to a question. Here's what you do. You ask what other document would answer questions that the DBQ raises. Format is going to be really similar to point of view. Attribution, okay, what would be the social status of this author? Now this time there's a little bit of something different than point of view. You're going to paraphrase what the argument would say. You're not going to write out the argument, you're going to paraphrase it. The purpose and the significance. And you can do this in an entire paragraph at the end of the essay. So here's an example. Here's a poor example. A document from a poor person, their social attribution, would help me to see how the Green Revolution had negative effects as well as positive ones. Okay, so there is a good part to this I want you to notice. A document from a poor person. Okay, so notice here, this is going to be a document from a social attribution, poor person, okay, who we don't have in the DBQ. This is really important. For the hypothetical document, it cannot be a document that we've already seen. So this is a new document from a poor person. It would help me to see how the Green Revolution had negative effects as well as positive ones. Okay, here's where we have the problem. Negative effects is way too vague, positive ones way too vague, and this is not telling me anything about how this would help me in my argument. Here's a much better example. A document from a rural farmer. Notice, here we go. Social attribution, really good. In a developing country would help to determine if the Green Revolution did undermine local customs. Okay, notice what's happening here. There was a question that arose in the DBQ about whether or not the Green Revolution undermined the environment and undermined local customs. Here we're going to give evidence that we would be looking for to answer that question. This would provide an answer to the questions raised in Document 9 about whether or not the Green Revolution replaced traditional seeds and cultural values from indigenous populations. So notice what we're doing here. We're saying, look, here's our social attribution, rural farmer. This document is different from all the documents that we have. Good. The purpose here is to look at whether or not Green Revolution undermined local customs. So got a purpose. Good. Significance. Tie it back to comparing to the other documents and say, here's how we would answer that question that arose from the other documents. Now, I only did here about 2 to 3 sentences. Okay, you can do an entire body paragraph, concluding paragraph off of this to end your essay. So, this is the way the DBQ has to be established for world history. You want to provide a thesis, body paragraph that starts off with a grouping, then use the documents as evidence, finish off with a point of view, and then have a concluding paragraph that is going to be your hypothetical document. Here are the elements you're going to need for this then. A thesis, 3 groupings. You want to provide all the documents need to be addressed within the essay. You're going to make sure to use a point of view at the end of each body paragraph. So by the time you're done, you're going to have at least 3 to 4 point of views. And then you're going to have 1 hypothetical document inside of that last paragraph. If you want to do 2 hypothetical documents in that last paragraph, that is fine to do that. By doing more than the minimum, you have a chance at getting the expanded core. We'll deal more with this in class and answer some questions. Hopefully this will help out as a starting point.